Welcome back from lunch. We hope you enjoyed the break, but my, what a great morning we've had already. And Brother Petoskey and I want to facilitate now for the remaining time a conversation about going from guest to ministry. And a very important topic, and I believe one that many who have pastored have found this to be challenging. And I want Brother Petoskey just to talk a little bit here about new member curriculum and your experience with that.
Thank you. And
you're welcome.
Thank you for joining us, as Brother Perry said. And as we launched this session, I was reflecting back to about 20 years ago. We at POGH woke up one day and realized that we were having less than 30% of those that enrolled in our new members class finish. It, at that time, was a 10-lesson class, and it was taught on Sunday mornings, and it would always take 12 or 13 weeks because inevitably a few lessons would take 2 weeks instead of just one. And so as I thought back on that, I realized at least we had a plan. One thing that I've observed in apostolic circles is an expectation for spiritual babies to figure things out on their own. In fact, if some of our practices were used to parent natural babies, we'd have them taken away for negligence. And so we have to have a plan. When we discovered that only 30% were finishing, we adjusted our plan. And we went to 3 5-week classes at the end of each cycle. And we would start New Life 1 on the first Sunday of a month, and it would go through to the first Sunday of the next month. So the 5 weeks would cover that first segment of New Life. And then the following Sunday, we did a big completion, graduation celebration, and we would call the graduates up to the front of the church as a class, and we gave them a gift bag loaded up and a certificate, and we prayed a blessing over them as a church family. Then we'd take the next 2 or 3 weeks off and start New Life 2 on the first Sunday of the next month, and continue that same cycle 3 times. We split up those lessons that had always run over and added some other content that we hadn't done before. And now we had 15 sessions instead of just the 12 or 13. And we all of a sudden were able to see 90% or better complete the course. And so we rolled with that for a couple of years. And then as we were assessing, and that's really the second key word I would present here, we were shocked to discover 2 years later that our perfect system we had come up with was all the way back down to 30% completion. And so let me just stress that point. You've got to continually assess what you're doing. Is it being effective? Someone asked me last month what was a memorable sermon title I'd use, and I preached a message several years ago, Sacred Cows Make Gourmet Burgers. I actually Googled it and found out someone wrote a book on it in 1995. I probably just saw the book title and preached a whole sermon on it, but that's beside the point. The reality is methods are many, principles are few. Methods always change, principles never do. So don't be married to your method. Assess what you're doing and determine, is this being effective? What do I need to adjust it, tweak it, revamp it? And so that last key word I've already stated a couple times is adjust. And we then adjusted to our current plan that we use, which is a 4-week new member class. 1 lesson is taught every Sunday. Folks can join anytime. They can finish anytime. And the rest of the content we've driven into small groups and personal discipleship. And we've made several adjustments in how we do those 2 parts, but the new member class in the format has had a long shelf life for us and has worked really well for us the last several years at POGH.
It's good information. I think what we need to make clear is we're not trying to give any answers here, but in this session, we just want good, lively conversation and to talk about what your process is. Maybe here in this time together, you reassess what's going on in your local assembly. I know for us, pre-COVID, we had major systems in place, and one thing we want to discuss in this time together is not just your discipleship class, your structured class, but kind of what Brother Petoskey keeps talking about with me is the shallow end of the pool. I don't know why I got that topic, the shallow end of the pool, but the shallow end of the pool being, how do you get that first-time guest to that point of ministry. And you don't necessarily take that first-time guest and dump them right into a discipleship course. I mean, we will if they're wanting to do that, but typically we got to somehow get them to take ownership and to say, this is my church, this is where I belong. How can I learn? How can I grow? And we have found that it has worked very well to do that. We have something called a growth track that we've taken from another group, and we've made it apostolic. We've made it fit Haven of Hope. And here's an example of a guest experience at Haven of Hope. They drive on the parking lot. They're greeted in the parking lot. They're greeted again at the door. If it's someone with a handicap need and handicap access, the person in the parking lot radios the guest greeter, and they're all prepared for that, and it's just a nice, smooth process. But through the course of this first time with us, we try to get them to commit to come back the next week to join Growth Track. And what Growth Track is, it's 4 Sundays a month. And there's a short video of myself teaching, and not really even teaching, just talking and sharing. And it's very generic. We talk a little bit about finance of the church. We talk about the different ministries of the church. On the 3rd week, our ministry leaders come in. So those guests who are hopefully no longer guests, but they're saying, hey, this is my church. And they get to meet the leaders, and they want to plug in now. And they know who to go to. And it's just this whole process. But now, post-COVID, we're having to do exactly what you talked about. We have to reassess this, and we're making some changes. And you know, one thing that I've told the church from the very beginning is we are married to nothing but my spouse and my Jesus. And anything to do with systems in the church that is not doctrinally connected, that's going to cause a problem there. We want to constantly be reassessing this, and I don't want to reinvent the wheel if I don't have to, but sometimes the wheel needs some more reinforcing, or maybe the tire's getting a little worn out and we need some better tread, and you can look at it however you want. But over the next hour or so here, hopefully we're going to walk away with a lot of good information as we all share what we're doing in our local churches. And also on your handout, you'll see a link to a Google Drive where we've compiled some resources, most of it very church specific, but you can change it all and use it however you need. So looking forward to this session.
In the handout, as well as some of the items are open source, where there's available at no cost, like the Google Drive that Brother Perry mentioned. And then there's some that there are costs associated with. And the other thing I think that we would both agree on is that clearly we have a very strong commitment to apostolic doctrine, but we learn and take things from sometimes non-apostolic sources as far as methodology, and find ways that are working, and then adjust and modify that to fit in our apostolic context. So I think between the growth tracks that Haven of Hope uses and New Life, and things that you're using that you'll be willing to share with all of us here today, that we're all going to walk away and feel blessed and benefited by this conversation.
Brother Petoskey, maybe something to get us started here. When that guest comes into your assembly, do they have to wait X amount of months? Do they have to look a certain way? Is there some place they can plug in and get involved to start that process of one day being ministry in your church? I personally believe that when someone comes through the doors of the church and makes it their home, we want them to get engaged, and wherever they can in ministry, even in the shallow end.
Even in the shallow end. You got to sometimes hold people's hand into the deep end.
Just don't hold my hand.
Correct.
Yeah.